Hey guys, don't forget, rent is due today. Here's my split and here's mine. Hey man, I don't mean to be rude, but how do you afford this place? I've never seen you work. Oh, well that's just because I own this place and you guys are paying the mortgage. Wait a minute, you're our landlord? Yep, the mortgage is $3,000 a month. You each pay me $1,600. So we're paying you to live here and we're buying you this house? How do you even do this? Easy, it's called house hacking. And that's actually how I got started in real estate investing all the way back in 2020. Fast forward 3 years later, we've got about 6 stores under our belt and a portfolio value of over $2.5 million. Now you're probably thinking, okay, you probably had help or you're some real estate pro. That couldn't be further from the truth. I come from an immigrant family. I was told, go to college, get a good job, and that's it. And that's essentially what I thought my path was going to be. But during the period of having that good job, I realized, wait a minute, do I really want to coming in, slaving from 9 to 5 from now until forever, only to be able to live my life in retirement at the age of 60 plus? No, not at all. And that's how I stumbled across the whole world of real estate investing and the idea of financial independence through real estate and achieving my ultimate goal of early retirement. So in today's video, I'm gonna show you the exact steps that I took to purchase my first rental property having zero knowledge. This is gonna be a no fluff piece with a step-by-step guide and also share with you kind of my real estate investing strategy, and hopefully that might be able to help you. The only ask I have is if you plan to watch this video and if you plan to finish this video, by the end of it, you have to do something. Period. I don't mean go buy a property, but you need to go do something. Whether it's open up Zillow to look at properties, whether it's running some numbers, whether it's calling a real estate agent, I don't care what it is, but you need to do something. The video is gonna have 3 short chapters. Section 1, the various types of real estate investing. Section 2, I'm gonna talk to you about why I think real estate investing makes sense. In Section 3 are the 5 steps that I would take to purchase my first rental property if I had to start over again today. Part 1, we're gonna kick it off with a famous quote by a famous billionaire, Andrew Carnegie. 90% of millionaires become so through real estate. So I say, pick your flavor. And trust me, there are flavors on flavors on flavors of real estate investing. Honestly, if you could dream it, you could probably do it. So we're not covering every single facet of real estate investing. I am gonna call out a couple that might seem appealing to you. The first type of real estate investing is wholesaling. This is a category that people gravitate towards a lot because you don't really need to put any amount of money down out of pocket at all. Basically, wholesaling is you're finding a deal and then you're finding a buyer for said deal and then you basically act as the transaction middle layer. And so you're not actually purchasing and then reselling. Another type of real estate investing is the traditional buy and hold. This one is exactly as the name applies. You buy something, you hold on to it, you rent it out, maybe at some point you sell it, maybe at some point you don't sell it. A third type of real estate investing that's really exploded in the past couple years because you see them all over social media, short-term rentals. I would say this is like a quasi branch of buy and hold, but the difference here is instead of having a tenant in there for 12 months or 6 months, you have somebody in there for, I don't know, a week, a day, a couple of days. And a further subset of short-term rentals is short-term rental arbitrage, in which you're just renting an apartment and then you're listing it on an Airbnb. That I'm more iffy about, but regardless, you can kind of see, even within a segment, there's another sub-segment of real estate investing. The fourth type worth mentioning is commercial real estate. In my world, if you purchase a multifamily home with 5 units or more, you're technically in the commercial space. But commercial space could also be investing in warehouses or something like self-storage. Something that I'm particularly interested in this space is syndications. I guess it's a flavor, but it's more of a method and approach to real estate investing where I put in some money, I raise money from other investors, and then we go buy something big. Just within those 4 flavors of real estate investing alone, you can probably go into a subcategory of any one of those. But for today's video, I'm gonna be focusing on buy and hold because that's primarily what I do, even though I'm interested in other assets of real estate investing. We can save those for another video, or if people are interested, you can comment down below. 2, why the heck would anyone invest in real estate? I'm gonna give you 3 main reasons. 1, tax advantages. Listen, folks. The people who pay the most taxes are the ones who work regular jobs. With real estate investing, there are a plethora of tax advantages. The one I'm gonna call out that I think is the most interesting is this thing known as depreciation. So say I've got a rental property, purchased it for $600,000. A year later, it appreciates and I get appraisal and it's valued at $700,000. Great, it's appreciating. But in the eyes of the IRS, the building of that rental property actually is losing value. And so every single year, because it is losing value, I get a portion in which I can deduct from my taxable income. Think about that. The property is actually gaining in value in the market every year, but in the views of the IRS, the building loses value every single year. And so the math is basically a straight line depreciation method where you take the value of the building, you divide it by 27.5, and that is how much depreciation you get to write off. Even though you're still collecting rent, even though it's appreciating, you get a write-off. Like, that's just cool, right? Like, I'm not the only one that thinks that. Reason 2, gaining equity. Folks, if you want to accelerate your net worth gain, you have a couple options. You can either increase on the income or asset side of it, or decrease on the liability/expense side of it. The example I mentioned earlier, that $600,000 property, was actually one of my properties, my first property ever. Bought it for $600,000. A year later, we had a refinance, and that was appraised at $752,000. I gained $152,000 in equity in 1 year. That's absolutely insane. With the equity, I could have done a cash out refinance, or I could have done a home equity line of credit where I take that equity and now I can deploy it into other investments. 3, cash flow. This one's straightforward. You get a rental property, you rent it out, cash comes in the door. Boom. Done. Now let's go over the potatoes and potatoes of the video. 5 steps of how you can start investing in real estate today. If you're interested, I'd greatly appreciate it if you wouldn't mind tapping the little thumb icon so we can go ahead and get this video boosted out there. Before we go with step 1 though, let me give you a quick pre-step because I think this is important. The pre-step is, 1, you need a good credit score. Easiest way, open a credit card, use it responsibly, pay on time and in full, build up a good credit score. Why would you need a good credit score? Because that thing is gonna give you better interest rates, and trust me, a swing in your credit score could easily cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars in extra unnecessary interest payments. So if you're in early, you're 18, 19, 20, get a credit card, start building your credit score. The second thing, you need to save for a down payment. This option of buy and hold, you're still going to need a down payment. Now, of course, the specific way that I'm going about it is using a 3.5% down FHA loan, so you do not need to save $100,000 or $200,000. But I would say 10 to 20,000 is typically what you would need to be safe. I say 10 to 20,000 because I'm in the Northeast. Now, if you aren't in the Northeast, you might be able to get away to closer to the 10K range saved, but regardless, you are going to need to save money for a down payment. The best way to do that is, folks, cut your expenses. You do not need to be going out with your friends popping bottles. You do not need to be getting that luxury apartment. Cut your expenses, save up for that down payment. All right, so those are the 2 quick pre-steps. With that out of the way, let's jump into our steps. So as we're going through the steps, the ground rules are, I'm looking to buy my first rental property. I have no experience whatsoever, and the method that I'm going to be approaching it from is using a 3.5% down FHA to buy a multi-family home so that I can live in one unit and rent out the other, which is also known as house hacking. But John, all of the real estate gurus online tell me it's impossible to do an FHA loan. You know, it's ironic for me to say you shouldn't believe everything you see on the internet, but you shouldn't believe everything you see on the internet. I know of multiple people who have done an FHA multifamily loan in a hyper-competitive market, Boston. So it's absolutely doable, and that's the lens that we're gonna approach the video through. Now, step 1, determine your end goal. What the heck is it that you want from real estate? Do you want to buy real estate because all of your buddies are buying it? Or are you adding real estate to diversify your portfolio? Regardless of what it is that you decide, at this stage, you wanna be clear of what does real estate afford you? Not just, I wanna buy real estate because this video told me to. Instead, what's the lifestyle that you're going to have if you buy some properties? And then let's back our way into that. For me personally, when it comes to real estate investing, I saw it as the surest way to be able to hit financial independence in early retirement. Because before I even jumped in buying my first property, I'd always thought, man, it would be so cool if I could be retired by 40 and just living the life I want. And I was like, okay, maybe real estate could add to that. Yeah, if I could just add 1 property a year from now until 40, and they would be average valued between $750,000 to $1 million, like that could be it. Admittedly, looking back now, that was dumb. There's no way I could have kept up that role because the debt to income would have swallowed me. At some point I would need additional capital, but regardless, I'm literally taking you back to step 0. That's what I thought. So take that both as a learning from me in setting a goal, but try to maybe ask people, hey, does this sound like a valid goal of trying to buy 1 property a year for the next 10 years? Have those conversations early. Step 2, location. Where the heck are you going to invest? Typically, people are gonna decide between do they wanna invest in their local markets or are they gonna look out of state? People make the argument that in local markets, you kind of understand the market better, whereas out of state, you have to rely on someone else. But for me, my decision criteria was more like local market, if you're in a coastal city, so we're talking New York, Boston, California, you're gonna probably have decent appreciation, or at least you know whatever you buy today probably is not gonna be worth less in 10 years. But on the flip side though, the cash flow isn't as great. Whereas if you go out of state, let's say go to the Midwest, maybe down south, your entry point might be lower. You might not get as crazy of an appreciation, but generally you'll see that you'll have more decent cash flow. My advice to you on this step of picking your location, don't get too much into the weeds thinking about, oh, property management, what am I gonna do? Because at the end of the day, you don't have a single property. Do not worry about what happens when you have 5 or 10 properties and you need to figure out management. Once you get to that stage, you'll be able to figure it out. Really just think about, are you trying to chase cash flow or are you trying to chase appreciation? What makes the most sense for you today? Step 3, build the team. Now, you don't need a football team, you don't even need a basketball team. It's really 2 people, really 1, but we'll say 2 because they're very important. The first person, agent. This person is gonna be your quarterback. This person is gonna be the one that really is able to direct you to other members of the team you'll eventually need way later down the line. In addition, this person is the one that's gonna understand the local markets. They're gonna know what's hot. They're gonna know what's trending. And if they don't, well, then you probably don't wanna work with them. A good agent truly can make or break your experience, especially as a newbie. And so when it comes to finding an agent, there are a couple things you wanna keep in mind. The first thing is, be very upfront with them of what it is that you want to do. So for me, I was like, hey, I want to invest in real estate, but specifically, I want to do a 3.5% down FHA loan and I'm planning to house hack. By being upfront like that, it cuts you out so much headache because you want agents with that type of experience. As far as finding a good agent, the first one most people do is word of mouth. They'll ask other people who've bought a home. But I caution you because your friends who purchased a home might have been purchasing a home for a different reason. It might be their forever home. It might have just been an apartment. And so when you ask them for their agent, you kind of can still ask, like, hey, what were you buying or what did you end up buying? And even when you get the agent reference, be very upfront with the agent, right? Similar to how you really want to qualify these people to see if it makes sense to add them onto your team. The second option is using the BiggerPockets forum. So this is like a huge real estate investing network. You can go on there in your local area and say, hey, I'm in Boston, I'm looking to work with a real estate agent and kind of see what that might dig up for you. The third option that I had success with, I actually went to a local real estate meetup. And so at these local real estate meetups, it's just people who are real estate investors. And so usually those agents there, they're used to working with investors. And I was really lucky to connect with the organizer of the meeting. His name's Avery. He's also here on social media, YouTube, Instagram. And Avery had worked with this agent, Taylor, who had done a good number of deals and he connected me with Taylor. And since our first deal, we've actually done 3 deals with Taylor. Now, is it gonna be the case every time you go to a meetup, you're gonna be able to find an agent that does exactly what it is that you wanna do and is also an absolute stud? No, I can't guarantee that. However, going to a real estate meetup, especially one that's geared towards real estate investors, your probability of finding a good agent to work with is up that high. Pro tip with agents. Don't use multiple. It's just not really good business practice. When you find a good one, stick with them. And if you're saying, hey, listen, I'm working with multiple people, be also upfront with that. The real estate investing community, especially where you are, is probably not as big as you might think it is. So when you find a good agent, stick with them. And the other person that's really important to have on your team is a lender. The lender is the money person. They're gonna tell you not only can you do it, they might be the one to offer some creative options of maybe instead of an FHA, we could look at different loan products. So this person is super important. And the way I found my lender was actually a reference through my agent. And remember my agent, Taylor, he works with real estate investors. And so he was able to refer me to a lender that also works with real estate investors. And real estate investors that prefer to use a particular loan product, the FHA loan. When I went to work with my current lender today, his name's Garrett, Garrett was like, oh yeah, like FHA loans, they're like more than 50% of my business. Yeah, we do them all the time. I spoke to 10 people before this one person was just like, yeah, that's perfectly normal. That's my business. I tell you that story because when you know what it is that you want, you just have to keep asking for it. The other thing to consider as you're talking to your lender is getting a pre-qualification letter. That is something that I know in the Boston market that your offer is not even gonna get looked at if the seller doesn't even know if you're pre-qualified. So you definitely wanna get that in hand. That's not a heavy lift. That's basically just saying, hey, we think John's good enough for X amount of money, and you send the letter out. And usually if your lender's good, they'll actually just pre-qualify you when you send in the offer for kind of the exact amount. Step 4, run the numbers. Now you've got 2 options running the numbers. One is the basic, which we'll go over. Second is the advanced way. So the first way, the basic way. For the basic method, the easiest is income minus expenses. Folks, what's coming in the door? what's going out the door. If that number is positive, then you're good to go. So on the income side, what do you have? Well, rental income. And to figure out your rental income, you could use a place like Zillow and gain a proxy of, okay, if I'm looking at a 3-bedroom in this local area, what are other 3-bedrooms in the local area roughly listing for? You can also use Craigslist. You can also use Facebook Marketplace, basically any place that's going to list a rental to give you a gauge of, okay, roughly I think a 3-bedroom here would be about $2,000 or $3,000 or $4,000. Another service I haven't used but people really like is Rentometer. That'll give you rental data. I believe you have to pay for it, and that's probably why I've never taken a look at it. Now let's move on to the expense side of the house. There's a ton more here that we're gonna have to go over, but the biggest one is gonna be what your mortgage expense is every month. On top of that, you might have to pay taxes, insurance. What about things like having to save for a new roof or a new furnace, because those things do break? Are you saving for that? What about vacancy? What happens if someone leaves and no one is in there for a month or two? Are you saving for that? You're gonna have to. So all of those are gonna be on the expense side. Once you have that, then you just take the monthly income minus the monthly expenses, and is that number positive? Now it's great to know that, hey, income minus expenses is a positive $100 a month. But what does that mean? Like, how do you actually know if it's a good deal or not? Well, one way that people take a look at it is measuring the cash on cash return. That basically says, hey, for the amount of money that I invested, what's my return on it? And generally what people would benchmark against, and how I benchmark it is, well, if I take my money, I put it into the stock market, I invest in a low-cost broad-based market index fund, I'm gonna get a return of anywhere between 8 to 10%. So that would tell me if my money is as good as that, then I'm good. If my money is gonna give me a return greater than 8 to 10%, then I'm really good, because that's kind of my baseline investment. To calculate cash on cash, you take your annual cash flow, divide that by how much money that you have to put in to the deal, and multiply by 100, and that's going to be your number. Now the caveat is I measure against a 8 to 10% return, but maybe you're like, hey, a 4% cash on cash is good enough for me, or a 5% is good enough for you, then that's great, you can run with it. But generally, most people are gonna benchmark against the S&P 500 returns as a baseline. Quick disclaimer, I don't mean to bring this to a 200 level discussion, but you're gonna hear people that probably gonna try to throw out to you cap rate. It's not relevant to you. A cap rate, or the capitalization rate, is really more applicable for commercial real estate. Because with cap rate, you're taking your net operating income and you divide it by the current market value of your units. The thing is, in the commercial space, you have a much better impact on the net operating income, right? Let's talk about a 50-unit apartment building. If we did a little bit of updates to amenities, if we updated some of the units, you could juice up your net operating income. Basically, you're gonna get more cash flow, right? It's a more premium apartment listing, that thing goes up, your cap rate's gonna be more favorable. Now onto the more advanced way, using a calculator, which arguably is probably easier, but you have to go find a good calculator that you like and you understand. So what I ended up doing, or I guess Viv ended up doing, was actually building a calculator for us so that we could run all of our numbers. It's pretty rudimentary, it's on a Google Sheets, and if anyone's interested, comment down below. I could always make another video of a deep dive of how exactly we use our calculator and show you guys the ins and outs. But for purposes of this video, I'm just gonna grab a couple of screenshots to give you an idea of what this looks like. So the first thing I would do is pop onto Zillow and take a look at various different properties. For me, I'm in the Boston area. I'm looking at sale prices under 1.2 million. I'm looking at multifamily, and I'm also looking at places with 4 bedrooms or more and 2 bathrooms or more. Next, you want to just zoom into a particular home. So let's take a look at this property in Malden that's been listed, 5 bedroom, 3 bath, a little bit under 2,500 square feet, and they're listing at $868,000. From there, I just take all the information I see on Zillow, and it's still kind of manual, but I plug it into my calculator. So the basic stuff like the address as well as the zip code, and we punch in what the asking price is as well as our purchase price. I also included here the purchase closing cost. Typically that's about 1.5%. It could be lower, it could be higher, but that's kind of the average we work with. In the sheet here, we can see that there's an income bucket and it's pre-filled. And you're probably thinking, John, how the heck are you able to pre-fill this income? I thought you had to go to Rentometer or go on Zillow and get numbers. Here's a secret sauce. And I kind of don't even want to let this cat out of the bag, but honestly, the more the merrier, right? I use the payment standards from Section 8. And so what Section 8 is, it's this federal program that helps people with lower income be able to afford housing. And what's beautiful about Section 8 is a tenant might only be responsible for a portion of the rent, but the government pays for the rest. And what makes my life easier is they actually publish out how much they're willing to pay for a 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, 3 bedroom, 4 bedroom. And in Boston, what I've realized is how much they're willing to pay is pretty close to the market rent, if not better than the market rent in some situations. And I know as a baseline, I will always have demand for my units because I'm willing and open to renting to Section 8 tenants. And I'm gonna have a quick note here. People give Section 8 a terrible rap. And that really irks me because there is this stigma of, oh, if someone is on Section 8, they're somehow a bad person and they won't take care of your properties. I've actually had the exact opposite experience. The tenants that I have had on Section 8 take very good care of my property, are extremely communicative, and they're some of the nicest people that I've ever met. So I don't understand where this stigma comes from. I personally think it's the landlord's fault of you're not taking care of your property, and so then obviously that's gonna be reflected by your tenant. But if you're in tune, you're taking care of your property, you're being communicative, you're being an all-around just good person, then the same thing is gonna be reciprocated. In addition, I go through an extremely thorough tenant screening process. By doing that, I make sure that, hey, my tenant selection process is good, I'll get good tenants, and so they'll take care of my unit. So moving on to the rest of the calculator, we have the fixed expenses here, we've got the variable expenses. So these are things that you wanna be saving for month over month. So things like vacancy, things like repairs, things like CapEx, like the big stuff like a roof or a furnace, making sure that you're putting aside money every month for when that happens, not if. We also put in loan qualification because we want to be cognizant of once we have multiple units, what's our debt to income ratios like. And lastly, at the very bottom is the loan details. And so here you can play around with how much you want to put down. Are you doing FHA? Are you doing a traditional? And as well as the interest rate. So with all that stuff plugged in, we go all the way back up to the top and over to the right, and that's where we spit out our results. As you can see, if we purchase this house using a 3.5% down FHA loan, in the first year that it's fully tenanted, we will be losing over $800 a month. That's a bad deal. In addition, obviously, because it's a negative return, it's gonna be a negative cash on cash of 17%. No way. So now, most people will be like, okay, I can't do it, like moving on. Well, no, that's why we have this calculator, right? So with the calculator, let's play around with some of the variables. Okay, they're asking for 868. Maybe it's been sitting on the market for a little bit. I don't know. Could we go in and offer them 800,000? All right, let's go ahead and change the asking price to 800,000. And we see that our monthly cash flow is still gonna be negative $355. Okay, that's not great. What else could we do? Who knows? Maybe this person really needs to sell this house. What if we came in at 700,000? Okay, if I offered you $700,000, this would actually have a positive cash flow of $300 a month. In addition, the cash on cash would be a little bit over 8%. I would say, yeah, I would jump on this deal all day. Now, this is a super high level example. The other thing you can manipulate is how much down payment are you doing? Are you maybe 5%, 10%? Or what about the interest rate? You can play around with all these variables, and then maybe what about some of your assumptions? Okay, well, this place looks like it actually just got renoed, so maybe I don't have to save as much for CapEx and repairs and maintenance, so maybe we dial that down to 1% instead of keeping it at the current 2%. But regardless, what I wanna drive home is when you use a calculator, you can quickly manipulate variables, so now you come to the offer table, you kinda know, that's my walkaway number. If we can get to 700, I'm in there all day. 720, maybe I'll do the deal. But if it's over 750, absolutely not, no way, moving on to the next one. And that's the most important thing is run the numbers, if yes, move forward, if no, move on to the next one. Boom, 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 boom. That's what you gotta do. Step 5, showings. Go see the sucker. There have been countless properties where the numbers were beautiful and I'm thinking, oh gosh, this is gonna be a great deal. You go in and it's like, wow, there is some major structural issues with this foundation that's gonna cost me 50 grand out of pocket. Nope, but you're not gonna know that until you go in. So even though the numbers are beautiful and crisp and you're seeing the dollar signs, you might go in and realize, this is not it. And that's totally fine, but that's part of this game. And a good agent is gonna be able to go in and basically snuff out BS. The first property we ever went into to view, I remember I walked in and I was like tilting and I was getting vertigo and I was like, this is an absolute nightmare, absolutely not, this is horrible, we gotta get out. We talked to our agent, it's like, hey Taylor, listen, like this thing's like gonna fall over, like I'm out. And he goes, oh, that's just some settling, like that's not a big deal. Like I looked at the foundation, it's solid. So settling is what happens when old houses over time sag. Now, you would think it's an issue, I would think it's an issue, but in the world of real estate investing and living in the Northeast, it's actually not an issue as long as your foundation is structurally sound. So have they gone in and put in, I believe it's lally columns, or have they reinforced the foundation? If yes, well, if the settling's not getting any worse, your house is good to go. I would never have known that. And it's funny because every single house we've purchased has had settling to one degree or another. And I've never had a tenant complain about it because we just accept that that's what happens in the Northeast. So that's the other reason why you wanna have a really good agent to be able to call out for you, that's BS versus that's actually something you wanna worry about. Now you've seen something, you like it, you gotta put out numbers. My biggest pro tip with offers is if something is undervalued and you say, hey, listen, they listed this sucker at 800, I can go to 850. Cut the BS. If 850 works for you, just go to 850. And that's honestly how we were offering. If something I was like, man, this is just really undervalued and we can go there and I think this is gonna be a bidding war, I'm just gonna give you the asking, even if it's over what you're listing for, because I still have the deal at 850, even though you list at 800. Let's cut the crap, here it is, let's get the deal done. I'd rather get the deal done than penny pitch, save 10, save 20, but potentially maybe lose it because someone else is gonna give you more. With a calculator, you can be very confident in what you think your returns are, and so that allows you, right, that aggressiveness when it comes to offering a deal versus, oh, they listed at 800, I'm gonna give 810, but everyone else is coming in at 840. Like, just, that's one thing to keep in mind. This has probably been a little bit longer video than usual, but as a real estate investor, this is something I'm very passionate about. So if you have any comments, questions, concerns, drop them down below. If you want a follow-up video of, hey, I want an in-depth of that calculator, let me know as well. Happy to make that. But until then, I'll catch y'all next time. Peace.